Hello and welcome to a new segment on AutoGuide. It is the semi-daily news. On today's episode, we talk about melting Corvettes, when we'll see the next new Lambo, what happened to George Russell, and could Maserati die? This is your AutoGuide to the news. Okay, we're going to kick things off with the Corvette ZR1 and its crazy 1,000 plus horsepower engine. So a report's come from The Drive explaining what that new rear split window is all about. The Corvette generates so much heat in ZR1 form. Chevy says the turbos are each around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So especially after the car drives on a track and really heats up and then is parked, there's so much heat. It's like sitting in a puddle of its own heat. That split window intake is designed to let the air escape out the top of the car and not just melt every component underneath the mid-engine hood. Probably the coolest fact about all this was a little tidbit about accelerating the ZR1 sort of at full throttle. So much heat escapes out the back of the vehicle. It's almost like a mirage as the car pulls away, looking through all the heat waves, which sounds pretty cool and I can't wait to see. Sticking to mid-engine supercars, Lamborghini has given us an official date as to when the Huracan's replacement will be unveiled, and that is August 16th at the Monterey Car Week. We don't know many details about the car itself, but we do know that it's going to have that twin-turbo V8 with a hybrid setup, and it's going to scream to 10,000 RPM and make in the neighborhood of 900 horsepower. So expect a new funky wedge shape, that's what Lamborghinis always are, and that incredible power plant, and I would guess all-wheel drive. I can't wait to see this, and more so, I can't wait to hopefully drive it one day. Moving on to some big news over the weekend. If you're a Formula 1 fan, there's going to be a spoiler here if you haven't heard or watched the race yet, so maybe mute it, but if you've already watched it, George Russell won the race and then he lost the race. So he was the first to cross the finish line, but he was disqualified because after the race, his car was weighed and it ended up being 1.5 kilograms under the allowed weight. Mercedes has owned up to this, saying it was a mistake, a miscalculation. So when the car was initially weighed with a bit of fuel left in it, it hit the minimum weight perfectly, but once the fuel tank was drained to the FIA limit, it ended up being 1.5 kilograms underweight, or about 3.5 pounds. So it's unfortunate George loses the race and the points over this because it is so small, but the rule's there for a reason. The way he's shown pace this year, especially last month, I'm sure he'll be back after the summer break, so we'll keep an eye on that. And Mercedes as a whole looked pretty good, as did McLaren and Red Bull, so I'm really excited for the second half of the season because I think there's going to be a lot of close actions, something we haven't had in years and years. So he's looking forward to that, and hopefully George can bounce back. At least he gets a lot of time to sort of process what happened and get over it. Mercedes engineers, especially the one that made that mistake, probably won't do it again or may not even be there anymore, but I wouldn't expect an underweight Mercedes again anytime in the future. And our final story for the day has to do with Stellantis. Last week, if you remember, CEO Carlos Tavares called out a couple plants and divisions within the company as a whole, and it was sort of hinted that some of these brands may be discontinued, or as we hear today from a story coming out of Automotive News Europe, they may be selling off some brands, and Maserati may be the first one that they're looking at selling, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it competes to a degree with some of their other brands, and it's kind of just out there, and maybe another company could revive it a bit more. I think if they sold that, they would be looking at maybe not selling some other divisions, but maybe consolidating. Do you really need Chrysler anymore? Even Ram as a standalone brand, I mean, it could go back into Dodge. That's just shuffling things around, but it might make it easier for the brand in terms of needing less headcount for marketing, product development, and all that. So we'll see what happens with the brand over the next couple months, but after the first half of 2024, it seems like there's going to be some changes coming. And as big of a change as this may be for those at Maserati, it's probably a good thing if they get sold, because the other option might be being discontinued, and such a historic, well-known brand being discontinued would be unfortunate. But if they get sold to another company or investor who wants to put money into them and revive the brand, that could be great. So we'll see what happens with Stellantis over the next couple months, because their first half of 2024 was not great, and I do believe some changes will be coming. Well, that's all we got for today. Let me know what you want to hear more about, or what news you'd like us to cover or discuss on this. We're hoping to do it daily. It'll probably be a couple times a week. But for now, this has been your Auto Guide to the News.